Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Transformed. Last week we talked Isaiah 54, where God commanded Israel, who was like a barren woman, to sing in the midst of that barren time. And now I want to take another look at another portion of that scripture at something else he told Israel to do in that moment. He said this to them. He said, enlarge the place of your tent, stretch out your tent curtains, don't hold back, lengthen your cords, and strengthen your stakes. You know, it was in that land of barrenness and confinement, it was in that season of restriction and affliction that God commanded them to prepare or to enlarge the place of their possession. You see, in that season of their affliction, God commanded them to plan the expansion in the next season. You know, you might be going through a season right now. Maybe you feel afflicted. Maybe you feel restricted. But what's keeping you from planning your next season as God gives it to you? You know, God tells us to expand for an expanded future. And sometimes we find ourselves living according to a limited past. Your past is not the limitation on your future if God is the one writing your future. You see, he told them, he says, listen, he said, he commanded them, don't fear disgrace, don't fear shame, and don't fear humiliation. Do you know, shame, disgrace, and humiliation of the past often keeps people from moving forward for the fear of experiencing more. You know, I was already ashamed once, and I'm afraid of facing shame again. I was already humiliated once, and I'm afraid of facing it again. I was already disgraced, but I don't want to face it again. You know, don't allow those things of the past and the possibility of them happening in the future to keep you from the future that God has planned for you. The enemy of your soul wants you to believe you will experience in the future what you experienced in the past, and that just doesn't have to be the truth. God's promise was this to Israel: you will forget the shame of your youth and remember no more the reproach of your widowhood. Shame often comes from our own actions. I've done things that I'm not proud of. I've done things that maybe I feel some shame over. Some of you have done the same thing. Shame comes from our action. It also can come from the actions of others at times, children, spouses, somebody else. See, here's the deal. Maybe the past has some shame in it, but the future has hope. Maybe your past is shameful, but your future is hopeful. The future is from God. The future that God has for you is greater than the shame of the past without God. So many people have a past that has shame because God wasn't in it. Well, I'm going to tell you something. If God's in your future, you don't need to fear the shame of the past. He told them to forget that, which again means to lose the remembrance, to cease from caring, to treat with inattention or treat with disregard. Again, it's not that you forget about it. You don't forget what happened in the past, but what you're doing is you now aren't going to be the caretaker of what happened in the past. You're not going to keep giving it care over and over and over and keep feeding it, right? So here's the deal. It's the promises of God for the future that cause us to not care about the shame of the past. Why do you want to live in the past if God has a future for you? Now, here's what you got to understand. For Israel, they had a past that brought them into their present state of affliction, but God had a promise for them. You see, the relationship of Israel to their past was directly related to their relationship to the God of the present. God said, forget the shame of your youth. Then he said this, for your maker is your husband. The Lord Almighty is his name. The Holy One of Israel is your Redeemer. He's called the God of all the earth. Your relationship with God in the present will help you relate to your past, but your relationship with God in the present will also help you face your future. We've got to understand this, that God is our Redeemer. He redeems the past, brings us into the present, and he takes us into the future. He is a friend. He is a father. He is all of these things that Scripture says he is. That relationship helps us view the past and helps us view the future. Out of that, they were commanded to sing. Out of that, they were commanded to expand. They were commanded to shout because God is. They were commanded to shout because God is their Redeemer. God is their Maker. You see those two words? God is. Here's the deal. For you today, I say to you, you might be in affliction. Sing. Sing because God is. I say today, you might be in that land of affliction. Shout because God is. Expand because God is. Forget because God said to. And last of all, prepare that season beyond affliction, even now while you're in affliction, because it's God who will help you forget and be fruitful in your affliction. Have a great day.